But let's begin with federal prosecutors that have opened a criminal investigation of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. At the center of the probe is the central bank's $2.5 billion renovation of its Washington, D.C. headquarters. But in a video released, Powell says that he challenges the Justice Department's motives.
This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation.
We're monitoring the markets for reaction to this. This is the big board from the New York Stock Exchange where the Dow was up to 400 points at the open, but is now only down about 150. So let's bring in CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman to talk more about this. Good to see you. So what is the DOJ accusing Fed Chair Powell of having done?
Powell says he's being accused of lying to Congress, Vlad, over the renovation of the Federal Reserve headquarters. Now, we haven't seen these documents yet, but he says that grand jury subpoenas have been served on the central bank. And as you just read, what he says is that this is really about interest rates and the independence of the Federal Reserve. He says this is a much broader issue here.
So how rare, I mean, he's called it, the Fed chair has called it unprecedented, is it?
To my knowledge, I'm not aware of a criminal investigation into a previous sitting Federal Reserve Chair, Vlad.
The president has also gone after Lisa Cook. She's one of the governors. There was no there as far as we know. Nothing's happened yet. He's gone after Jim Comey. He's gone after Letitia James. I mean, just putting out an indictment and getting somebody, in this case, it's Jeanine Pirro, who's a longtime ally of the president, to approve this indictment. She's a former Fox News, person. It often feels like he's using the DOJ, putting these indictments out, and then grand juries look at it and they go, this isn't a thing.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen a pattern of him using the Department of Justice to go after his perceived political enemies. In this case, he's currently denying any involvement in this, Vlad.
Because under normal circumstances, a Fed chair would be under indictment for the renovation of a Fed property?
Well, he just says, I don't know anything about it, but he's certainly very not good at the Fed, and he's not very good at building buildings. He also claimed that he wouldn't go after him for the interest rates. He said what should pressure him is the fact that the rates are far too high. That's the only pressure he got. So that's his comment on this matter for now.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the Fed is supposed to be independent of political oversight and political machinations. And we've known for the last couple of years, even though Donald Trump appointed Powell to the chair, that he's wanted to bring interest rates down. And just the fact alone that the Fed chair has said the economic circumstances do not require these lower interest rates, the president's not happy about that.
Yeah, that's right. And as we heard, Jerome Powell thinks this is all about the interest rates, that this is just something that they've come up with to go after him.
Yeah. All right, Katrina, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it as always. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes is joining me now. She's joining us from the White House. So Nancy, I want to just remind our viewers, here's what National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett said today when CBS News asked him if this undermines the independence of the Fed and could potentially destabilize the markets.
I guess the question is, if you think the building costs $20 billion or $10 billion, do you think at some point that it's appropriate for the federal government to investigate? And seems like the Justice Department has decided that they want to see what's going on over there with this building that's, massively more expensive than any building in the history of Washington. And if I were Fed chair, I would want them to do that.
So, Nancy, what else is the White House saying about this?
You could see how careful Hassett was being there, because not only is he the president's top economic advisor, he is also one of the two finalists reportedly to replace Jerome Powell as Fed chair. So he made clear to weigh in this morning he did not go after Jerome Powell. And the White House, for the most part, is pushing off all questions about this matter to the Department of Justice, which they say is handling the investigation. But there is another interesting stumbling block that has arisen for the White House here, Vlad, which is that Tom Tillis, who is the retiring Republican senator from North Carolina, has said that he views Jerome Powell as a straight shooter. He has a lot of concerns about what he sees as administration interference here. He thinks that this is political, and he says that he is not going to vote for anyone who is appointed to the Fed until this investigation is concluded. He wants answers about why he believes Powell is being targeted in this way. And the fact that someone like Tillis is coming forward and saying this creates the opportunity for other Republicans, gives them a little cover to come forward and say the same thing. There's no question this is going to cause great concern on Capitol Hill, not only because the Fed is supposed to be independent, but also because, by and large, they think that Powell has done a good job and is a serious person.
Yeah, that's the point, right, Nancy, that he's done a good job, that he's a serious person. He's remained above the fray of politics. And Tom Tillis coming out and very pointedly saying what he has said is a big deal because he could be that deciding vote on the next Fed chair. And, of course, he's got nothing to lose. He's retiring. He's not running for re-election in 2026.
Exactly. It was also notable what Powell came out and said last night in a video as soon as a word of this investigation came out. He was very pointed, and this is somebody who is very, very careful with his words. But what he came out and said is that this new threat, as he put it, this investigation isn't about my testimony last June. It isn't about the cost of this building. It is about the fact that I am, and the Federal Reserve is setting interest rates based on what he called our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. So he basically came out and said that he thinks that this has everything to do with the fact that the president doesn't like what the Fed is doing, even though the Fed is supposed to be independent, and he thinks he's being penalized because of it. This is a really novel situation, Vlad, because Jerome Powell, as opposed to some of the other people that the president's Department of Justice has gone after, people like James Comey or Letitia James, he is someone who has a lot of bipartisan respect on Capitol Hill. And so it will be interesting to see whether Republicans are willing to push back on this, and Tillis is sort of the first inkling of that, more aggressively than they have in some of these other cases.
Yeah. And we all remember that moment where the president, pulled out some piece of paper where he noted that the renovations were costing more, and the look on Jerome Powell's face told you everything you needed to know, that the president's, according to him, the president's facts were incorrect. And maybe Trump didn't like that because it happened on camera. Let's talk about what he wrote, the president, on social media over the weekend. And he said that the U.S., quote, stands ready to help Iran. Break down the Trump administration's plans based on what is happening right now in the country.
I don't think we know exactly what their plans are yet, Vlad, only that they are preparing several different options for the president, and CBS News confirmed that the president was briefed on those options over the weekend. For the past couple of weeks, the president has been issuing stern warnings to Iran, basically saying that the U.S. is locked and loaded and ready to go in if Iran continues to kill protesters. Well, now, by some estimates, about 500 protesters in Iran have been killed. So take a listen to what the president said over the weekend.
We're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination. A meeting is being set up, but we may have to act because of what's happening before the meeting. But a meeting is being set up. Iran called. They want to negotiate.
So he says they want to negotiate. It's not clear what he's referring to there, whether they want to negotiate over his threats to bring military force to bear over these protests, or whether they want to negotiate over their nuclear plan. Nevertheless, the president is, has continued to indicate that he is ready to take some action in Iran. They are now threatening the U.S., saying that they will retaliate. And so it's not exactly clear where this is going to go, Vlad, but we do know that the president is meeting this morning with his Secretary of State, and that there are meetings, some kind of meetings set up with Iranian leaders tomorrow.
All right, Nancy Cordes reporting from the White House for us. Nancy, thank you.